New moon, solar eclipse, full moon in Libra, incels, simps, the shadow of feminism and the mother wound. What's this all about? Well, stay tuned because we have an action-packed energy update here. New moon, solar eclipse, full moon in Libra, incels, simp. Here we are. And oh my goodness, if you're new to me, I am Rosanna RozyGlow Hanness, and I'm here with the message from the StarPeace Collective, which is all about how we can create peace in one generation. Every new moon, every full moon, we have an opportunity, one, to plant a seed with the new moon, and with the full moon to do the healing around that seed. And we have literally just had a lunar eclipse in the new moon of Aries, which is the start of the astrological year. This is the fourth attempt we have at a new year, because we have the solstice, we then have the Gregorian new year, we have Chinese New Year, and then we come into the astrological new year. And it's a powerful time, my friends. Remember that 2025 is all about a year unlike anything we have ever known. So we can either fasten our seatbelts and enjoy the ride because it's going to be epic if we line ourselves up with it, or we can feel like we're going to be constantly dumped, one tsunami of change after another, wondering what on earth is going on and when things are going to get back to normal. Well, there is no normal, my friends. There is no normal because we're moving out of the era of struggling to survive, and we are co-creating a new era, which is all about being wired to thrive. So stay tuned to find out more about what this means now and the current energies and how you can actually work with them. I am Rosanna RozyGlow Hanness. I am live from Sydney today, even though I live in the UK. And yesterday was Mother's Day in the UK. Now, this is really important because obviously we have Mother's Day at different times of the year. But as it happens, with the Mother's Day, coming with the new moon energy, there's a really powerful shift that is almost like being able to force a splinter out that's been so deep inside of us, it just hurts all the time. It's an owie that's like, ooh, ooh, ooh. And yet it is so important we get to the root of it and we understand what it's really about, because whatever man we love to hate, whether we're a man or a woman, or however we identify gender-wise, it is really important for us to remember that every man has come from the womb of a woman, and every woman ultimately is responding to her environment when she is growing a baby. And we are in the era of pioneers and trailblazers co-creating a new paradigm. So it's very important for us to learn from history and her story in order to create a new story for all of us, which is actually the story of uniarchy. Excuse the coffee machine in the background. And this is the era we're moving into, which is the era of the star children, aka us, the star seeds. So let us just take a moment. I'd like you just to take a little breath with me and open your heart to receive this message. If you feel triggered by what I say, remember, for the most part, this is about semantics. It's the way we understand things. And I was having a conversation yesterday with my daughter, with her best friend, and with my best friend about the shadow of feminism and why I don't call myself a feminist. So if you want to know more about that, stay tuned because I'll dive into it. And it does not mean for 1 minute that I am anti-women, okay? It does not mean for 1 minute that I am not pro what is stood for, but there is something that is slightly off, which will never ever get us out of the conflict we're in unless we adjust our perception and we adjust the way that we show up in order to allow the equality that is our birthright to actually be seen in this world. So let's start from the very beginning. I've got loads of notes, so I'm actually going to stick to the notes so that I can actually support everyone to stay on tune. I suggest you write notes because there's a lot here to unpack. And when I'm speaking through the frequency of RozyGlow. I am a channel of divine grace. I'm a psychic soul coach. I'm a multidimensional mentor. And I work with those who are the 144,400 star seeds that have come to this earth to activate the Thrive paradigm through sacred union. And please remember that sacred union, first and foremost, is about the relationship with yourself, and that is your human and your soul self. Then it is about the relationship between the eternal and the temporal, so the divine and the physical, practical, the bit that dies in us. And it is also about our connection between our inner masculine and inner feminine and inner child, and how this actually relates into our relationship with others and the world around us. Now, believe it or not, there's a link between nature and feminism too, which I really want to unpack in the next half hour or so. So let's dive straight in. Now, I have something called the StarPeace Paradise Earth Portal membership, which is brand new. It is birthed out of the creation of this beautiful book, which you can buy from Amazon. And I'm just going to say to you that chapter 29 is what this is all about right now, the energies that we're currently in. It's about sacred union and conscious conception as the foundation of world peace. Now, I'm not going to read this out to you, but this really is what I talk about. And sometimes I feel like I'm just saying the same thing again and again. And that's what needs to happen, because you know what? There's some serious cognitive dissonance between what we say we want and what we're actually living. It's the walking and the talking. People say they want peace. People say they want to thrive, but they keep expecting to survive and to struggle and the worst to happen. And it's like we're wanting one thing, but we're preparing for another, and nothing is going to shift if we do that. There is something intrinsic that needs to happen on a deep foundational level, which is us learning to be rooted in love rather than fear. And this is why everything that's coming up right now is coming up. Yes, it is the end of the patriarchy. Yes, that is why there's a real stinker of some seriously wounded masculines coming up and out and trying everything they can to keep things as they have been, because that is what we have known. And remember that a wounded masculine can actually exist within you too, if you have the body of a woman. Okay, whether you've had a sex change or not is irrelevant. Everyone's had a mum, everyone's had a dad. We all have an inner masculine and an inner feminine. We all have an inner mother and an inner father. And the important thing is that we evolve both aspects from wounded to resolved and to divine. And that's what we're here to talk about today. So what is this solar eclipse all about? Well, this is really the end of a chapter of eclipses. It's the end of the Libra and Aries axis, and we've now moved into the Virgo Pisces axis of eclipses. So there's something different going on. It's all to do with the nodes. I'm not an astrologer, but what I do want to say is that whatever we completed just now relates to something that started 2 years ago. And I'll go into how this affects each sign in a moment. So stay tuned, because this will be about both your sun sign. You could also look at your moon sign and also your ascendant, and your ascendant is known as your rising sign too. So if you have got Aries, like if you are an Aries sun sign, an Aries ascendant, or an Aries moon, it's going to be particularly poignant, but it will also affect you in different ways depending on which sign you're actually in, and also where the houses are. So this is something you might want to check out if you love a bit of astrology. The key thing is do the research on the things that you feel excited about, because this is part of your soul mission. So where am I going? Well, it felt really important to recognize that Aries is the newborn of the zodiac, right? And I was really feeling into recently the energy of the pioneer and the trailblazer. I've been obsessed with watching things like Yellowstone, and I think it's 1883, and then there's another one in between. And I don't normally watch things that are really violent. I find it really challenging. And if you know anything about what I talk about regarding edutainment, you know how important it is for us to understand that what we watch, what we listen to, what we read for our own entertainment purposes on some level is impacting us. And it's either supporting us to grow and evolve, or it is feeding our fears, feeding our anger, feeding our resentment, feeding whatever keeps us in duality and conflict and division in this world. So it's really important we're mindful about what we watch, but there is a place for everything. So meeting ourselves in the problem so that then we can seek the solution is key. But remember that you cannot create a solution from a problem-focused mindset. So we do want to see what's going on that has been hidden in plain sight, and that is what is going on presently for all of us. What is key is to recognize that there is some real wounding, both in the feminine and in the masculine, that is the result of having been wired to survive for so long. If we just go back 9,000 years in the whole of the patriarchy, that's long enough. That's so many generations that it seems hardwired into us. And what's key is to remember that what was absolutely golden advice, golden messaging for us maybe 6, 7, 8, 10 generations ago, right now is counterproductive. So we're having to use the power of our imagination to make the shift from what it was like to what we want it to be and how we can show up for it. Now, it is wonderful that as we've been growing more conscious as a collective, we've become more aware of the impact that we've had on Indigenous folk in any continent, okay, but also on the environment, We also know how we've been manipulated and we've been controlled to stay divided. It's really important to recognize this, because anytime we are fighting for change, and there's a little seed here in relation to the feminism part, we are staying in some way divided. We're against something and we're pro something. Now, if we want to evolve beyond Star Wars into StarPeace, beyond duality into oneness, it is key that we collapse the division within us and we decide what we are 100% in front of and behind, what it is that we are congruent with, that we are aligning with in every which way, shape and form, and we are willing to see the parts of us that are out of alignment with that. So here's where it actually goes. Incels, I didn't even know what an incel was, right, until recently. And I did hear about what simps were some time ago, and I will go into what these means. But very recently, I was interviewed for a podcast with the lovely Wyndham James, who is the Blueprint coach. And after it, I got nicknamed Rosanna Red Pill Hanness. And I thought, ooh, awesome. Very much with the Matrix, love all of this. It's all about that. But actually, I've come to realize that the way that this is being used is in a very similar fashion to how many really awesome concepts have then been taken and turned upside down. And this is what I mean about us being really aware and discerning presently about how we are constantly manipulated to stay divided, to stay in war, to stay in conflict, even when we feel like we're doing something really awesome. Who manipulates us? Well, we could say our own shadow, you could say the media, you could say politics, you could say entertainment, you could say all of the above. But essentially, change is never something that is willingly embraced, certainly not in the era of survival, right? Change is something that is fought against and resisted every step of the way, individually and as a collective, until there is no other option but to adapt. Otherwise, we face our annihilation. And this is where we are. We're on this threshold. So remember, the dinosaurs of the old world that are going extinct are not going to just lay down and die. They are kicking and screaming. And I'm just going to use some names of people that I know many, many men and women love to hate, whether we're talking about Mr. Tate, whether we're talking about Mr. Trump, whether we're talking about Mr. Gates, whether we're talking about Mr. Musk. And I personally am not going to share my opinion on this because it's irrelevant. What matters is, where do we get triggered into having an enemy? Because the enemy outside is the enemy within. The parts that we despise in others are elements of our shadow to bring to light and to love. And it's key for us to remember that there is a deep, deep healing required, which is why I call this the mother wound healing, and why it is so pertinent that this solar eclipse actually has occurred in connection to the Mothering Sunday that is in the UK. Because although the UK is small, it's very densely populated, it's very powerful, and there is a strong link with what goes on there and the rest of the world. It's considered the heart chakra of our planet, right? So it's really important to remember that we are going through a massive upgrade, all of us collectively, where we're evolving beyond the wounded aspect of our own being, which is the ego and the solar plexus, into the heart, which is where we get to be heart-centered and soul influenced. This means we're switching on our connection to our soul self, and we're no longer being controlled, manipulated, and dominated by our ego programming. Now, I want to make really clear that every one of the men that I've just mentioned can easily be seen as being incredibly egotistical. But let's actually look at what the ego means. The ego actually means survival programming. From the perspective of what I teach, the ego aspect of our consciousness is the part of us that has been wired from our time in the womb, one could say even as far back as our conception, and even before, to survive rather than thrive. This is the part of us that avoids change at all costs, the part of us that wants to stay safe no matter what. It's also the part of us that, if we are truly in impending danger, it's the part of us we want to listen to get out of that life-threatening situation. The problem is, we are so trigger happy with this aspect of our being to this point that actually we feel everything is massively threatening to us, and actually most of it isn't. When you wake up in the morning, tell me, what is the first thing you think about? Please put it in the comments. What is the first thing you think about? And what is the first thing you do? I'd really like to know. What do you do first? And what do you think about first? Because this will tell you a lot about your wiring and what you are predisposed towards, and where the shifts are going to be key for you to make in order to be able to experience the Thrive paradigm. So it's not about one and done. It's not about you do it, you make a change in your life, and then suddenly it's all over. What this is about is the fact that ultimately what ends up happening is we get to this place where we think it's going to be changed forever and that's it. But actually, it's about making the choice every day, making the choice every day to shift your beliefs, to shift your focus, to shift your perception to whatever is key for you to shift your focus to in order to have the breakthroughs. So if I just go back to my notes and give you a little bit more what's going on here. Now we're moving into the full moon energy that's coming up, is the full moon energy of Libra. And this is where we get to have a healing. The healing is about evolving our inner masculine and our inner feminine, as I said, from wounded to divine. But the challenge with this is that we also have Mercury retrograde till the 7th of April. We then have Venus retrograde until the 13th. And Libra and Venus, they're together, right? It's all about that. Libra is governed by Venus. What is important is for us to recognize in this space that we have the opportunity to do something inside of us that will have an impact on the collective. And this is how we create peace. Okay, it's not an outside in fighting for peace job. It is a cultivating peace within and seeing which parts of us are not in resonance with peace. So whether we're talking about incels, which are really involuntary celibates, right? This is, I didn't even understand the term of it before, but they're celibate men, often, more often than not, no, they are always celibate men, apologies, that have some kind of vindictive energy towards the feminine, resentment towards the feminine, because they feel unseen, they feel unwanted, they feel unheard, undesired. And then there's this whole sort of attacking energy towards hating on the very aspect that they want the love and approval of, which really is a mother wound that then plays out as a partner wound, because they're not getting seen and heard, just like they weren't getting seen and heard by mum. And maybe they were shouted at and shamed on a lot, because shame is a patriarchal wound. Now, if we go towards a simp, and what a simp is someone who is overly sympathetic. Again, this tends to gravitate towards the masculine, but I have heard it used in terms for the feminine too. And this is when someone is overly trying to kind of make, well, it's basically fawning. It is an aspect of the sympathetic nervous system, fight, flight, freeze, fawn. When you're trying to make yourself what someone else wants, indispensable, overly caring for them, ultimately desiring some kind of sexual connection, some kind of approval, some kind of extra attention, which is not necessarily going to receive. So, you know, when you know someone's out of your league, but you will do everything you can to be around them, make yourself the friend rather than actually be nothing to them. But what you really want to be is the lover, the boyfriend, the partner. And there's this counter movement that's been going on where sort of more macho guys are kind of going, don't be a simp, you know, don't treat women like so well, like just treat them mean, keep them keen. And all of this has been playing out in our collective, right? When you think about the Tates of this world, angry masculine energy, not very respectful to the feminine, which again makes a big play for why could understand feminism being on the rising and why so many women feel so strongly that it's important to fight against this kind of wounded masculine energy. However, it's the fight that keeps us divided. I'll come back to that. Now, take a breath. Feel into this because it's powerful. When I talk about the energy of Aries, we're talking about the energy of the pioneer. We're talking about the energy of the Fool and the Tarot deck. We're talking about the energy of a part of us that decides to take action, but has no idea what the journey entails. This is the newborn of the zodiac, as I said, that has no problem with stating its needs, crying for food, crying for comfort, crying for sleep, crying for discomfort. Like a newborn baby doesn't hesitate to let you know what they need until they're ignored so much This is where control crying, this is where putting them into the routines that were really popular 20 years ago, they still are to this day, but ultimately it was about ignoring the needs of the baby until the baby stopped asserting their needs, stopped stating what they needed. What ends up happening with that is not only are our cortisol levels set for life and we end up very stressed and suppressed, think about the masculine, what I'm talking about, but also that we feel like we're not important, our needs are not important. And we play that out because this is an energy that plays out. So it doesn't matter, again, your gender or non-gender. What's important to remember is if you were left to cry as a baby consistently, if you were ignored, not given cuddles, if you went by what Dr. Spock said and all the early child development pioneers who really didn't know what they were talking about, sorry to say this, who would say, you know, if you pick your baby up and you meet its needs, you're creating a rod for your own back, all this kind of nonsense. This is where we got wired to survive. This is where we built up resentment, which is often linked to birth trauma as well, that is unprocessed. And it's so important we talk about this because in my book, I talk about the 3-prong formula for peace. And one element of it is pre-birth and neonatal influences. And if we don't actually look at this, this is like the root of being wired to thrive rather than survive. And it's so important we understand that, one, the context of the relationship between the mother and the father prior to conception and during pregnancy is really, really important. But two, it is also about how safe, secure, supported a woman feels. And in the era of patriarchy, this is why this is so important, often the price was very high for security, for safety, for support, for the feminine. It meant suppressing our truth, suppressing our authenticity, suppressing our beauty, suppressing whatever it is that was needed to be suppressed. Often it also meant giving something away that we didn't want to, sexual favor for financial support, marrying into wealth or marrying into a good family even though you didn't actually love someone, because this would support, you know, the continuation of the bloodlines having money, having wealth, etc. There's been a lot of sacrifice, both by the feminine and by the masculine, and it's in all of us and has to be brought to light. Now, what else can I say about this? I feel like I could go down a million different roads, but what I want to share with you is that, as I said, with the new moon energy, we're becoming aware of what is ahead of us. And with the full moon energy, we have the opportunity to clear it. And this is why what I'm saying to you now is the what. The how we actually do it is what we gather together to do as the full moon gets ready to peak. And I'm going to be hosting the full moon world service on the 13th of April. Now, please bear in mind that is part of the StarPeace Paradise Earth Portal membership, as is the masterclass that comes to support you to do the healing work around the full moon. So presently, our masterclass is the mother wound, the 3 secrets. So it's the 3 keys to unblocking the flow of receiving. And this is about unblocking the flow of receiving love, approval, acceptance, the capacity to thrive because we've had our needs met. Now, remember, many of us consider that the original provider energy comes from the masculine, the patriarchy, because what we've been taught in the last 9,000 years, if not the last 80,000 years, is to give our power away to external authority, to suppress our own intuition and actually go to someone who knows better than us, whether we put a priest between the divine and our own capacity to just have a connection with the divine, whether we go to a doctor, whether we have to give our power away to science, to whatever it actually is. And I'm not against anything. I want to make this clear. I'm just saying that we've been living through an era where we have been giving our power away rather than trusting our innate authority and being taught to trust it. And so when we come again to this energy of pioneering, because that is what we're in the energy of the Aries new moon, and also we're in a pioneering paradigm as we create an era of thriving. We look at the pioneers of old, whether they headed to Australia, whether they headed to New Zealand, whether they headed to America, wherever they went around the world, whether we talk about imperialism, we talk about how, you know, it was all about staking claim, staking land as our own. There was a lot of raping, pillaging. There was a lot of taking what isn't ours. And this is the thing, is we forget that actually nothing belongs to us on this earth. Everything belongs to Mother Earth. It's hers. right? But we like to claim that this is mine and this is yours. And it was the advent of, if you like, farming and land ownership, very much related to how we came into the ownership of women and marriage, and this is mine, this is yours, these are my children, I'll look after them. Whereas in the era of matriarchy, it was much less known whose children belonged to who. And so everyone was looked after as a whole. And I'm not harking back to that time and saying that was the golden era, because we wouldn't have got to patriarchy if things were balanced in the matriarchal paradigm. We're now evolving to a new time, the time of the divine child. Imagine that up until now, we've been learning what it's like to be female dominant. We've also been learning what it's like to be male dominant. And now we've also been learning about the shadow aspect of the feminine, the shadow aspect of the masculine, and we're unifying everything to bring us into the energy of the whole resolved mother and father that can meet the needs of the child, put those needs first because their own needs are taken care of. And this is how we're evolving beyond it all. So, as there has been a lot of raping and pillaging, and there has been a lot of killing, and there has been a lot of suffering, remember that those who did in the end stake the claim on the land that made them Americans, made them Australians, made them in whatever country we want to come from. The key to this is to remember that they had to really fight for it and struggle. And those who actually survived were the toughest at the time, were the ones who endured the hardship, got through it, and were able to then have families, right? They were then able to procreate despite those harsh circumstances. So this is where that wiring for survival is so deeply ingrained in us. And it's why that harshness is there, and why there is so much unforgiveness and lacking of compassion. And it's this imbalance, isn't it? Either too much compassion and suffering for others' pain, or not enough because we're cut off from our own. So shame plays a huge part in us overcoming this imbalance, because there's a lot in the collective now around the wounded masculine and how the wounded masculine plays out, whether it's an incel, a simp, they are an incel, a simp, whether they're an avoidant, whether we keep falling in love with people's potential rather than the reality, whether we keep perpetuating the wounds of our ancestors. It's all coming to light. We're all living out our ancestors' stories until we choose to live a different story. And when we choose to consciously co-create, which is different to manifesting, this is about co-creating for the highest good. This isn't about ego programming leading the way in terms of what we're going to manifest for our own fun and joy. This is actually about what could be for the best for the collective. And I mean the highest good, not the greater good. What's the best for me, the best for you, and the best for us as a whole? How can we own our desires fully and also surrender them to the highest good? We are in this era, my friends, learning what this means. And so there's a lot of undoing of what was. We recognize it was relevant then, but not now. When I come back to this wounded masculine element and how it plays out in wanting to hurt the feminine, to hurt the woman, whether it's the partner, whether it's the child, whether it's the mother, remember that hurt people hurt others, right? You don't get someone who, was wired to thrive actually creating pain in this world. They're not going to do that. They were wired to survive. They went through some really tough stuff. They probably had some real hardship, likely in their early childhood. And as a result of that, they decided it was better that they put themselves first at the cost of all others than it was to actually be able to find a way where everyone can benefit. And when you feel your mother didn't love you, didn't encourage you, didn't support you, didn't nurture you, didn't nourish you, but actually resented you. Maybe you were the product of abuse, the product of rape, the product of an unwanted visitation by the father. Maybe you were the product of who knows what, but ultimately going back through these generations, often a woman carried a baby without wanting to carry that baby. Often a woman carried a baby in fear, in anger, in resentment. Maybe she was constantly in threat of her own life. And so remember that it's not her fault. It's not mum's fault. But when a baby has been grown in challenging conditions in the womb, when a baby has experienced birth trauma, when a baby has actually been taken from the mother after birth and never been given the opportunity to heal, to have the opportunity to soothe, to together be able to create the conditions that allow one to feel safe, then this continues forevermore. This just gets perpetuated in that person's life. They don't trust others. They find it difficult to create bonds, healthy relationships, and then this passes to the next gen and the next gen. So it has to be looked at. And think of the leaders today and just consider how many of them have looked at their birth story? How many of them have overcome their birth trauma? How many of them had early life challenges or difficult pregnancies and conceptions? And is that why they might be the way they are in this world? Remember, everyone is playing their part, okay? Everyone is playing their part. So you might not like the personality. You might not like what that person stands for, but consider what they are doing in this world today and how they're helping to shift the narrative in the collective, because so much has been hidden and suppressed from us individually and collectively that until it comes to light, we find it difficult to believe it is true. And there is a very strong connection here as well between self-identity and beliefs. Most people find it incredibly difficult to have their beliefs challenged because their self-identity is directly linked to their beliefs. So who are they if they are not those beliefs? Remember that next time you're in conflict with someone. And I invite you to consider for yourself what you feel you really stand for. What are the core values, the core beliefs you live by? If you're happy to put them in the text box, please do. Because consider then those core beliefs as your self-identity, and then consider how they impact what you are pro and what you resist in this world. Because what we resist persists. What we focus on grows, and where attention goes, energy flows. So all of this is key, and this brings me to nature, feminism, and why I don't call myself a feminist. So bearing in mind that this could potentially be very, very triggering for others, and I know it's triggering for my daughter, and in the end, it was a conversation that I had with her bestie that helped us to get to a place of understanding. And I had to look it up. I had to look up feminism. I actually at uni studied a whole term on nature as feminism and how the advent of controlling nature has been very strongly linked to controlling women. And over time, how man has sought to dominate nature and the advent of industrialization and the raping of this earth, etc., and how strongly this is actually linked to suppressing the power of the feminine, the fear of the feminine being unruly and wild and impossible to tame, right? Now, am I pro-equality? Of course I am. You know, but I do believe that this is our God-given right, and it's about us claiming it. It's about us owning it. It's about us recognizing it is we are intrinsically worthy of it. So yes, our ancestors have had to fight for it, thanking them for the fact that they stood up against oppression at the time, and they did do what was needed to get us to this point today. But is the fight the key for the future? No. Fighting was necessary then. What is important now is that we claim our worthiness. We claim our intrinsic worth, our intrinsic power, our intrinsic equality, right? And this is going to be true for everyone and everything, because labels are very popular in today's world. Just looking up feminism, there were all these sub-feminism categories. And I'm just like, oh, this is like the rainbow flag. And in the end, as I write in the book, are we going to look at unifying, or are we going to look at subdivision, in which case we keep separating? Because it's no longer about us defining ourselves in contrast to something else. The important thing for us to create a global culture of thriving is to seek what we have in common, not what separates us, but what unites us. And that is how we will overcome the trauma of the past and seek out the forgiveness and the compassion that will allow us to come into integrity, transparency, accountability, and discernment. Because not only do we have a wounded masculine and a wounded feminine in every one of us, but we also have an inner martyr, an inner narcissist, right? We have an inner victim, an inner persecutor, an inner judge. And the important thing is to remember this and to decide, what do we want to energize in the collective? Because that is what our frequency will amplify in the world. So if you're up for this work and you love the idea of being part of the solution rather than the problem, I'm going to invite you to check out the links that I'm putting in the text box, which I'll do after I finish this. you'll get a link to the StarPeace Paradise Earth Portal membership. It's a monthly membership. It's really affordable. It's the price of this book. I highly recommend you grab this book if you haven't got it already. It's available on Amazon. I think the important thing to remember is it's a divine matrix activation manual for awakening humanity, making the shift from surviving to thriving. Okay, so if this is what you want, all the codes are in here. Everything you need to know is in here to support us to make the shift from being problem focused to solution focused. I'm inviting you to join me on the 13th of April, which will be the Sunday. It'll be 10 a.m. in the morning, 8 p.m. in Australia. I may have to change the time, but just bear in mind that that's the most likely time it's going to be, where I'm going to be working with you live to hold a vision of the future that we are going to bring into the present and clear up resistance to it. That is what a co-creation meditation is. That is what reality crafting is. When we come together live, we're incredibly powerful. You come into my Zoom room, and this is where I interact with you. We bring to light all the shadow elements that have been coming up for you individually and for the collective since this video has been made. All the comments that you share, everything that comes up for you in preparation for the full moon gives us the invitation to then bring healing through the energy of the Venus full moon, okay, the Libran full moon. And this is then going to prepare us for the next new moon and the next full moon, which are going to be about us healing the feminine aspect rather than the masculine aspect. So the sting in the tail energy, which is the full moon in Scorpio. And I'm not going to go there now, but that is the vindictive feminine energy. I'm talking now about clearing the vindictive masculine energy that comes from wounding. But it's playing out, and it's playing out in all of us. And as I said, the key is that we choose to be the prototype. We choose to be the one that acts as a surrogate for the world. And when we do that, we affect everyone around us because we connect to the crystalline grid, the divine mind grid, and the divine human heart grid, which I call the sovereignty grid, and the divine matrix. And all of this language might seem new to you, but you are a star seed if you are someone who seeks to bring peace to this planet through your own intention and efforts and vibrational frequency. That's probably the only label I really feel comfortable with aligning with, because I believe we're all from the stars. And it's a bit like in the book ET 101, where there is a difference, a distinction made between ETs and aliens. And the way it's described is that aliens are of nefarious intent. ETs are connected to their soul consciousness, and they're on a volunteer mission to bring peace around the world, around the universe, around the multiverse and the omniverse. And yet, when you describe an alien is just an ET that doesn't know they're an ET yet. So I believe all of us, we are either awakened, awakening humans, or we are getting ready to be awakening. And the important thing is that this means heart-centered and soul-influenced. We have been disconnected from our divinity for so long. That does not mean you have to embrace religion. It does not mean you have to embrace a particular spiritual doctrine. It doesn't mean you have to do 100 Hail Marys every day or 10 sun salutations. It means you choose to connect to the infinite and the eternal within you, and to let that lead the way, because your soul is eternal. Your human self is ancient. There's codes in these bloodlines, and these bloodlines have a lot of trauma that wants to be brought to light and overcome. So we change our cellular memory. And what happens from that is we can go way back, because we are the survivors, right? We are here today by virtue of all of our ancestors, and we didn't need hospitals. We're here despite the fact that we didn't have hospitals, right? So somehow we've all been born naturally for the most part, except for the last 3-4 generations. And we can go way, 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 way back to the time that we were wired to thrive once upon a time. It is available to us, and this is part of what I connect people to. So aside from all of this, let me just share with you now the impact of the eclipses on your zodiac sign, and how the ending of this chapter, which is the last 2 years, which was the Aries Libra axis of eclipses, is now moving into the Virgo Pisces one. But whatever is culminating now will relate to, if you're in Aries, self-orientated goals, image and profile, physical body. Remember, this could be your ascendant, this could be your rising or your moon. Sorry, your rising is your ascendant, your sun or your moon. If you're a Taurus or have a Taurus in your energy, retreat and inner work, caring for others and sacrifice. So where have you been sacrificing too much at the cost of yourself? Gemini, friends, groups and social networks. Cancer, career and vocation, status and reputation, your future path. Leo, travel, education, beliefs, religion. Virgo, other people's money and taboo issues. Libra, relationships, partnerships and contracts. Scorpio, work and service, lifestyle and health. Sagittarius, self-expression, creativity, children and love affairs. Capricorn, home and family, your past and legacy. Aquarius, communication, community, neighbors and siblings. And finally, Pisces, possessions, assets, values and self-worth. As I said, you can also look at where Aries is in your houses. This will tell you which house has been most prominent in terms of the impact of the eclipses that we've just been going through the last 2 years. If that's something you know about, go check it out. If not, please note that I took this information from Sally Kirkman. Sorry. I'll put the link in the text box to her article. And also just to honor Tanaz, who I love her Forever Conscious Astrology, she's talking about the impact of this particular solar eclipse being about us doing a deep, deep cleansing, releasing from our cellular memory that which no longer serves us, taking that deep breath in and out and allowing the letting go of what no longer supports you. That means, can you trust yourself to thrive rather than survive, to let go of the survival programming that up until now has worked for you, but at what cost? And to embrace what it means to thrive. And it also means holding the highest vision of yourself, which is what we will be doing with the Libra full moon. So I would love to know how this is all landing with you. I would love to know what it's bringing up for you. I'd love to know what it's triggering for you. And I'm just reminding you that I'm here to help bring healing to this world. We have to firstly know where our sore points are so that we can actually bring them to light. Now, if you want access to the Mother Wound Masterclass, as I said, it's the 3 essential keys to unblocking the flow of receiving. That could be love, could be money, could be opportunities, but it's all to do with the mother energy being the original provider energy. And I just want to say thank you for taking the time to listen to this. Thank you for taking the time to energize what I'm sharing, because if we can move beyond the love-hate paradigm and we can just choose to focus on what we want to energize in this world, we will see a shift in the collective much faster. When you feel like you are in division with someone else, seek to understand what the other means. So when someone says, oh, I'm triggered, I can't do this, I can't do this, like, okay, what do you mean by this word? Here's what I mean by this word. Here is what my problem is with this word. Here's why I don't align with it. And remember that we all in the end want to find common ground. So if we feel like those we love the most don't see things the way we do, that can feel really scary and hurtful, because we all want to have a tribe to belong to. Now, here's the thing, we're moving beyond individual tribes into one global tribe. It is the puzzle of paradise earth that we are co-creating together. And I'm not talking about centralization. I'm talking about unity in diversity. Okay, so this is beyond the argument for globalization and centralization. This is about us reclaiming our autonomy, our sovereignty, and our inner authority. And on that base, uniting together. So I hope that's clear. And on this point, I'm just going to say, I love you. Thank you so much for joining me. And some of the statements that we're going to be working with, so the energies that we're going to anchor into our frequency with the full moon in Libra include: I am the embodiment of the divine masculine and feminine in harmony within my own being. I am bringing my shadow to light with love. I am the resolved feminine and masculine within. There's more to it than that, but I'll leave that for you joining me, and I'll see you in my Zoom room. Take care for now, lovely ones. Have the very best time, and I'll be tuning in again a little later from Sydney. Bye for now.